patriotic prints, chants and signs. This is what it's been like in Staten Island in New York City.
They're welcome if they come legally. They're not welcome if they're illegal. And plus, these people are not vetted. We don't know who's in there.
All over New York City, old gyms and hangars are being converted into migrant shelters as the city struggles to deal with a huge influx of migrants. Protesters say they will continue to demand the migrants are moved out of the former school-turned-shelter.
Immigrant sentiment is now growing, with 60% of Canadians now saying it's too high.
The country does not need another million Uber drivers and Tim Hortons workers.
Why are we bringing in so many people if we know for a fact that we don't have housing for them?
We just have to remember that this is a humanitarian struggle.
Montrealers coming together for a pro-Palestinian rally in downtown Place des Arts.
We want a Europe free from fear, free from terrorists who shout Allah Akbar.
What they're chanting now is traitors of the people. They're referring to the leaders of Germany who are allowing all these refugees in.
This continent is at a boiling point. While the debate over Muslim refugees rages in America, we're traveling across Europe, where the far right is turning angry rhetoric.
The reality is that the next terrorist attack in Europe will be by Muslims.
Into reality.
We want Sweden to stay Swedish.
Fueled by a seemingly endless river of refugees, as well as by the ISIS attacks in Paris.
At least one attacker posing as a refugee.
Ultra-conservative, anti-immigrant parties are on the rise.
For the Christian, Jewish culture, because this is the culture we have in Europe. We don't have an Islam culture here.
But to my surprise, the people here aren't stereotypical skinheads. They seem like regular, reasonable folks who are simply scared.
When some people are living with the Islam, it's okay, but not so much.
We have to show them that people don't want them here. They want to stop the invasion.
In these latest images of the border between Russia and Finland, dozens of cars are seen idling on the side of a snowy road, and a group of visibly cold people huddled in what appears to be a tent. More than 500 asylum seekers, mostly from Yemen, Somalia, Syria, and Iraq, have crossed the border into Finland in the last 2 weeks. The surge in asylum seekers has prompted Helsinki to close all but one of its border crossings with Russia in a bid to stem their flow.
Right-wing groups organized a massive protest Sunday in Belgium against the United Nations Agreement on Global Migration, orderly and regular migration to avoid humanitarian crisis of recent years.
Thousands of demonstrators marched outside major EU institutions in Brussels to protest the UN agreement setting up a common framework on the management of international migration flows. Sunday's protests in Brussels turned violent as demonstrators clashed with police.
We need to work until we are 67 years old. It's not normal. And they throw the money for the immigrants who will not serve our country. Then they don't respect our country, so why we do need to pay them?
Europe is dead because of the politics, because of the European Union and this Commission building that signed this compact contract for the immigration. That means that the European people will be dead in our home. So no, we want our home back.
Sun seekers on a tiny Greek beach have been interrupted by a boatload of illegal immigrants, unloaded onto their strip of paradise by smugglers who then sped back out to sea. The group of less than a dozen were helped from the water by locals who then called the authorities.
It's all for everybody else and not the Irish.
Irish lies matter! Irish lies matter!
Ireland has been invaded.
They're not working for the Irish people, they're working for the EU, they're working for the puppet masters.
Oh no, 5 officers on him to take his hat.
They're anti-Irish and they need to go.
For future generations, I couldn't look them in the eye and say I didn't try.
Irish children in schools who feel like they are the odd one out in their class.
None of us here hate any race. The problem is we're being overtaken. That's the problem.
We, the people of Era, stand up to a parasitic government. We've had enough. Enough is enough.
Illegal immigration has caused a lot of anger, especially in low-income areas where the immigrants are being put in. IPAS centres are being set up, so they're being brought in at night. The community's not being asked or being discussed. It's just been happening at night.
Irish parents have to pay for their children to go to college and university, and the illegal immigrants and the Ukrainians are getting it for free. I'm a grandparent, I'm a concerned grandparent, and I'm just scared out of my wits for what's going to come ahead.
Just outside the main train station in the northern Italian city of Como, several hundred migrants have been camped out since July, when Switzerland introduced strict controls on new arrivals from Italy. According to the International Organization for Migration, more than 106,000 migrants and refugees arrived in Italy between January and August.
Lithuania has built the first stretches of a steel wall on its border with Belarus since migrants from the Middle East and other areas began entering from Belarus this year.
Tempers flare in this small Lithuanian village as locals protest the building of a new refugee camp. It will soon house hundreds from Iraq, Syria, and Africa, and these Lithuanians fear the better life migrants seek will come at the expense of their own.
The migrants won't let us live in peace. They've decided to invade this small village. There will be more immigrants here than locals. We have small children. Who will guarantee they are safe?
Ahmed, an English teacher from Syria, has tried 4 times to climb the fence along the Belarus border, waiting for a chance to head west into EU member Poland, where he could apply for asylum.
We came from war to find a good life. We came for peace. We are not against anybody here.
The number of people arriving has been rising. Last week, a soldier patrolling the border died after succumbing to his wounds from a confrontation with migrants on May 28th. On the other side, armed Polish border guards and soldiers keep a close eye on the group.
Serbian officers have intensified their presence on the border to address the influx of migrants attempting to reach the European Union. On Thursday alone, police detained 371 mostly men along the border. Some were found in tents, while others, including families with children, were seized in a field. Many were handcuffed, with officers closely monitoring the situation. Searches led to the discovery of weapons, highlighting what could be an escalating danger.
Moroccan police have stopped hundreds of migrants from crossing into the Spanish enclave of Ceuta. That comes after dozens had managed earlier on Sunday to cross the first border fence between Morocco and the EU territory. Sunday has been a day of high tension after hundreds of people gathered at the border following reported calls on social media for a collective breach attempt. The Spanish news agency EFE said that the young migrants were mostly Moroccan nationals, but that some came from elsewhere in Africa. The twin Spanish enclaves of Ceuta and Melilla are the only land borders between Africa and the European Union. Both have experienced occasional mass waves of migrants trying to cross the border to reach the EU.
Denmark is one of the safest countries in the world, but these last months were remarkable. On July 24th, there was a shooting in central Copenhagen. and a 16-year-old boy from Sweden was arrested. A week later, another person was shot, and again, the suspect was a teenager from Sweden. These kids are often recruited on Telegram with messages like these, which offer $48,000 for a job in Denmark. The next day in Copenhagen, there was an explosion. The day after, there was a double shooting. This was the third incident with Swedish criminals in 1 week.
Regeringen ser på problemet med allra största allvar.
The police set up security zones where they could stop and search people without probable cause. Copenhagen lies just a bridge away from Sweden, where gang-related crime has been spiraling out of control. This is blamed on the poor integration of immigrants. They disproportionately ended up in poor neighborhoods, where over the years, parallel societies emerged. First and second generation immigrants are now 9 times more dependent on government welfare, and almost half of them is unemployed. Immigrants are often segregated in poor communities. In the most extreme cases, like the Stockholm suburb Rinkeby, nearly 90% of the population has an immigration background. This led to social exclusion and in turn to gang formation. As gun violence was going down in other parts of the EU, in Sweden, it was going up. Stockholm now has roughly 30 times more gun violence than London, and Sweden has the highest gun crime death rate per capita in the EU. Sweden had been incredibly generous with its asylum laws, but they failed to integrate new arrivals. Denmark.
McDonald's, shame on you! Boykotta Dunken! Boykotta Dunken! Kamrater, vi skiter i McDonald's nu och fortsätter vår demonstration. Länge leve Palestina!
Violent clashes. Sweden's gang wars in a series of explosions linked to a gang war.
Hi there. All right. Have you just come back? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
These poor people that have gone through hell need somewhere to go to.
This small village in England is divided as dozens of asylum seekers have been moved into a local hotel.
It's turning us into racist people, which I don't want to be racist, but it's making me dislike these people.
What do you think the village needs saving from?
Just 250 strangers that we don't know anything about.
Of them. It's a family-run hotel with a gym, a pool and a popular restaurant. But last month, without much notice, all bookings were suddenly cancelled and all the signs to the hotel were covered over because the owner had signed an exclusive contract with the Home Office to use the hotel for asylum seekers.
We are here! We are here together, proud to be together. We stand against all racism. All! We're in solidarity with the Palestinian people fighting. You guys should be embarrassed.
All around the port of Calais, even in broad daylight, these migrants are everywhere, looking for transport across the Channel.
France is on fire, no matter when you're hearing this. Many French people believe that the country's streets are becoming increasingly hostile, and many parents panic whenever their daughters walk alone in the street after a certain hour. It's hard to say, but if we take into account security, there are neighborhoods in Paris where you don't even feel like you're in Europe, and there are suburbs where the Caucasian French population don't even dare to enter. But much of this increase in crime has a common denominator: immigrants, and also many people of foreign origin, but yes, with French citizenship. In fact, if we take a look at the main concerns of National Rally voters, we can clearly see that immigration and security, or rather lack of security, rank first and third respectively. To begin with, keep this fact in mind. The percentage of foreigners living in France legally, not counting naturalized citizens, is around 7%. Remember, 7%. Well, let's take a look at a few figures, as up to date as we could find. And let me just say, we were blown away. But decide for yourselves. Foreigners now commit 41% of all robberies, 34% of vehicle-related robberies, and 35% of unarmed violent robberies. Of the latter, by the way, almost all are committed by people from Africa. But there's more. Take a look at this.
Foreigners at the origin of 77% of the rapes elucidated in the streets of Paris in 2023.
I don't know, it's really dreadful. We're talking about the fact that in relation to their demographic presence, foreigners commit almost 6 times more robberies in France as a whole, while in Paris, the rate of rape is almost 4 times higher among foreigners.
The surge in migration is putting huge pressure on housing and infrastructure. Well, the immigration floodgates are well and truly open, with new numbers out today breaking 2 records. Net migration, that's the difference between the number of people coming in and going out, was at 128,000 in the year to October. The last record gain, set back in March 2020, was just over 80,000. The other record, 219,000 migrants landed here in the last year, again breaking a record set in 2020.
Well, a few weeks ago, the federal government announced that 650,000 migrants would be arriving in Australia this financial year and next. For context, that's the population of Canberra and Darwin combined, plus a few more.
I don't think people should be coming in from that war zone at all at the moment. It's not prudent to do so, and I think it puts our national security at risk. We should stop people coming in from a war zone, Carl. So that's what we should do, because we don't know if the proper checks haven't been done. The 1% or whatever it might be who pose a threat. You bring 3,000 people in, let's say 99% are good. If 1%, 30 people are questionable or sympathises with a listed terrorist organisation, how on earth is that in our country's best interests?
So you bring in more people to fill those jobs that need to be filled. But all of those people then need somewhere to live. If they've got kids, they need a school to send their kids to. They need a shopping centre to go to, so on and so forth. So by bringing extra people in, you actually create extra jobs that then need to be filled. And we don't have enough people to fill those jobs, so we've got to bring in more people to fill those jobs, and then we've got to bring in more people to fill the jobs that they created.
Or we could just have more babies.
So at what